Local Capacities for Peace, or Do No Harm, is the systematic study of the impact of humanitarian aid by outside agencies on situations of violent conflict. It seeks to identify patterns in how aid interacts with conflict and adopts a learning attitude for improving future programming. Do No Harm is an analysis tool supporting quality program design and implementation. It is not about changing your program goals. You'll have the same goals while improving your program's impact on conflict. And it is not the same as peace building. Peace building refers to activities and programs directly addressing causes of conflict. Do No Harm improves relief, development, and advocacy impact while working in conflict. The main thrust of Do No Harm is to push for aid agencies not to worsen destructive conflict. However, this does not mean that constructive intergroup struggles or social change should be avoided, or that agencies should attempt to prevent constructive intergroup struggles from happening. Clearly, in all societies in the world, injustice continues to exist, and we must be continuously engaged in working for greater, more inclusive justice. The focus here is how we can be aware of and avoid inadvertently worsening destructive interactions that do not serve to promote and strengthen justice. Conflict is like a volcano. In terms of a community where we might work, we might wait until communal violence erupts before we do anything. But the volcano view requires us to ask, what are the trends and patterns behind the eruption of violence in the communities where we're working? Are there days of the week when violence is more prevalent? Are there places or situations in the community that are more likely to experience conflict? Are there people groups who are usually the subjects of the violence, or other people groups who are the perpetrators of violence? And then more deeply, when we ask questions at a structural level, what are the economic inequalities, for instance, that require some people to think that they need to resort to some form of violence? What are the patterns of discrimination that pressure the oppressed to express themselves violently? Once we understand these things, we can design the project interventions or program options to minimize those forces and pressures that drive people to violence, and instead harness the forces and pressures of harmony and cooperation in a community. This is the framework for Do No Harm. The context of conflict is where you or your organization is implementing the project, activity, or program. The context will have several actors, who could be individuals, groups, or organizations, and many interactions between them. And in all contexts, there are two realities that exist even before you enter. They are connectors and dividers. They fall into these 5 groups. 1. Systems and institutions. 2. Shared or different attitudes and actions. 3. Shared or different values and interests. 4. Shared or different experiences. 5. Symbols and occasions. Now we look at the aid or development program. Here are the 8 questions, 7 W's and 1 H, you will need to ask in order to explore the specific decision you'll be making in terms of developing a program, project, or activity. What? Why? When? Where? With whom? For whom? By whom? How? In addition, you have to consider 1. The organizational mandate. 2. Fundraising mechanisms. 3. The HQ organization. While very important, these last 3 factors only influence the decisions you make. It doesn't mean that they can't be changed or counter-influenced. The above decisions will impact the context, the dividers and the connectors, through resource transfers and implicit ethical messages. The impact on the connectors and dividers could be either positive or negative. Aid given in a situation of violent conflict becomes part of that conflict one way or another. The impact is positive when the program influences the dividers or tensions to come down and strengthens the connectors to go up. The impact is negative when the program increases the dividers and decreases or weakens the connectors. If our program impacts the context negatively, we should find options to change this. Find options separately to lessen the negative influence on either side, increasing dividers or weakening connectors. Experience tells us that there are always options. Make sure that you double-check the options that you came up with to strengthen the connectors with the dividers, and check the options that you came up with to reduce the dividers with the connectors. Finally, redesign your program with the new options that you came up with on either side of the framework. Repeat this process from the beginning of your implementation to the end, and during the program, as a means of monitoring progress. And now here are some definitions you'll want to be familiar with.